U.S. President Donald Trump has raised the prospect of regime change in Iran. In a post on social media, Trump said it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? This comes after U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump says the Iranian nuclear program has been obliterated, but the UN's atomic agency chief says it's not possible to properly assess the damage.
Satellite images show the Iranian nuclear site Fordo before and after it was struck. These are believed to be the entrance holes of the U.S. bombs known as bunker busters, capable of penetrating up to 60 meters below the surface. Fordo is built deep inside a mountain. In central Iran, these images show the Isfahan nuclear site before and after it was struck by Tomahawk missiles launched from a U.S. submarine. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the mission, codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer, devastated the Iranian nuclear program.
The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Iran responded to the attacks on its nuclear sites by firing a barrage of missiles at Israel. Most were shot down, but some got through, causing extensive damage in the cities of Haifa and Tel Aviv, where this banner appeared thanking Donald Trump for striking Iran. Iran's foreign minister condemned the attack.
There is no red line that they have not crossed. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy. We are now calculating the damages.
In Tehran, hundreds took to the streets to protest against the U.S. strikes. Among the protesters was the Iranian president, who has sworn not to let the U.S. go unpunished.
Our correspondent Benjamin Alvarez joins us now from Washington. Ben, the president is now talking about regime change. Do we know whether the U.S. is considering to actively pursue a toppling of the government in Iran?
So we need to differentiate not only between what President Trump is saying, or in this case tweeting or posting on Truth Social, and what he actually intends to do with it, but also what he has said in the past and what he is saying now, because you're right, it is the first time that the U.S. president is actually raising this possibility of regime change in Iran, and that is a stark contrast to his constant criticism in the past over those within the Republican Party who have supported regime changes in Iraq or also in Iran. And this Truth Social post from President Trump means a clear departure from the rest of his administration, including from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who we just saw there in that report during his press conference at the Pentagon, because U.S. officials are stressing that their goal is to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and not to push for a regime change. But looking at the situation on the ground, there has not been a significant uprising against the leadership in Tehran since the war began. So this might be just an additional attempt by the U.S. president to increase pressure even more on Tehran over possible retaliation against U.S. military bases in the region.
Trump ran on an anti-war platform, right? And he was specifically critical of these forever wars, he called them, in the Middle East. How do people, especially Republicans who voted for him, feel about their president now?
That's a very good question, because President Trump campaigned on many things, not just on being an anti-war president, also that, for example, he would end Russia's war on Ukraine in 24 hours, something that is still far from happening. But the domestic pressure also within of his supporters, the group of his supporters, is growing on Trump's strikes on Iran, therefore directly involving the United States. So that's increasing. We have some Democratic, some Republican lawmakers also calling on Congress to rein in President Trump's use of military force in Iran, preventing an even wider U.S. involvement in this deepening Middle East conflict. But right now we have a Republican leaders in the Senate and also in the House of Representatives strongly backing this U.S. attack. So it seems rather unlikely that any resolution that asserts the power of Congress to declare war could pass both chambers. But if this conflict spirals and grows, it would definitely not only test Trump's foreign diplomacy skills, but also his support at home, especially from the factions of supporters that didn't want the U.S. to launch these strikes.
DW's Benjamin Alvarez in Washington. Thanks so much, Ben. And we can now keep talking and bring in Katrina Sammour. She is a regional security analyst with the Emirates Policy Center. That's an independent think tank based in Abu Dhabi. She joins us from the Jordanian capital, Amman, this morning. Katrina, welcome back to DW. Now, Donald Trump, we talked about it earlier, is now openly speaking about regime change in Iran. What do you make of that?
I think the president, Donald Trump, is pushing on or pressuring the Iranian regime to make concessions. I believe the strikes, they expected the strikes to have more of an effect on changing the Iranian discourse or the leadership's discourse. However, we're seeing that they are downplaying it, and the strikes against Israel are still continuing, although in lesser amount than it was before. The thing is that we do not have, no country has access within the Iranian community. We don't have a coalition. We don't have opposition that can bootstrap a government in case of regime change. And additionally, we need to look at the popular sentiment. I mean, I'm following the Iranian popular sentiment, and even extremes opposition of the Iranian, the Ayatollah regime, are against the strikes and against the bombing campaigns. So we are not creating an environment that would allow a quick or swift regime change. And I don't believe whether Europe, United States, or even the wider region is interested in another nation building project that similar to the one we had in Iraq, that we are still paying the consequences for, basically.
Yeah. Many of the critical voices are especially concerned about all the civilians that have been killed in Israel's strikes on Iran. Now, you mentioned it, Iran's messaging has been very defiant in the wake of these strikes. But as far as you can tell from where you are, how big a blow did the U.S. really deal to the Iranian leadership here?
I think the biggest message from the strikes is not the blow that they dealt to Iran, but the message that was sent that the U.S. is the #1 superpower. We need to think about all the logistics and the military might that went into carrying out the strike, how swiftly it happened, the use of the different bases scattered around the world, not just in the region, to carry out a strike like that without any incidents, basically. We still don't know the effect or the true effect of the strikes. I know the president is saying that the nuclear sites were obliterated. However, experts and reports indicate that the enriched uranium has been moved, and we're seeing Iranian reports and Russian reports coming out and saying that the Iranian infrastructure has still not been hit or completely destroyed because of how well fortified it is. But we need to take it with a grain of salt, because I believe Iran is downplaying this, because if it actually was hit severely and they announced that, this means that their retaliation needs to be bigger than what they are planning right now.
Yeah. Iran has vowed major retaliation against the U.S. Are we likely to see them strike U.S. military targets in the region? There are tens of thousands of American soldiers stationed there.
Look, the way Iran strikes military interest, U.S. military interest, is through their proxies. And the proxies have been severely weakened. Hezbollah is still trying to regroup in Lebanon. The PMC in Iraq, the Popular Mobilization Corps, is keeping their head down and trying to not get into the crossfire, especially when we have elections coming up and they're being integrated into the state and gaining more and more influence. And the Houthis can directly strike Israel, but have brokered their own deal with the United States, so they can avoid U.S. strikes against them. I don't believe there will be a military action against U.S. interests, especially with the way Iran is downplaying the attack. However, we should expect maybe what Iran has been threatening with the Strait of Hormuz and maybe trying to mobilize popular discontent against the United States and tap into Arab anger that has been accumulating for the past 2 years, because we need to look at the bigger picture. It is not Iran-US-Israel conflict. We need to look at the past 2 years with the war in Gaza, with the bombing of Lebanon, and now the intervention in Syria.
Yeah. That was Katrina Sammour of the Emirates Policy Center. Always great to get your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. Have a good day.